What if I told you that your soulmate has never been the one making you wait? What if the only thing delaying this connection has been a belief so deeply rooted that you've mistaken it for truth? Have you ever felt that no matter how much you hoped, searched, or prayed, love remained just beyond your reach? Tell me in the comments, have you ever believed you were waiting for your soulmate? Stay until the end, because the final realization may completely transform how you understand love, destiny, and your own life forever. If this message is already shifting the way you see relationships, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. These conversations are for those who are ready to understand themselves before trying to understand anyone else. And if you've stayed this far, comment below, "I stop waiting." That simple sentence may represent a decision your unconscious has been preparing you to make for a very long time. For most of your life, you may have been told that somewhere in this world, one perfect person is waiting for you. You imagine that when they finally arrive, everything will make sense. The loneliness will disappear, the confusion will end, the emptiness inside will finally be filled. But what if this belief has quietly become the very reason you remain emotionally suspended between hope and disappointment? Waiting can become more than an action. It becomes an identity. Every passing year reinforces the idea that life has not truly begun because the missing person has not appeared. Without realizing it, you stop fully inhabiting your own existence. The unconscious mind is remarkably obedient to the stories it repeats. If you continually tell yourself that happiness belongs to a future relationship, your psyche learns to postpone fulfillment. It begins filtering every experience through absence rather than presence. You overlook opportunities for growth because your attention is fixed on what is missing instead of what is emerging. This is how a simple romantic dream transforms into an invisible psychological prison. It convinces you that love exists somewhere ahead while quietly stealing your ability to recognize the richness already unfolding within you. This does not mean meaningful relationships are an illusion. It means the habit of waiting often prevents genuine connection from developing. A person who believes they are incomplete unconsciously searches for rescue rather than companionship. Every encounter becomes a test, every disappointment a confirmation that destiny has forgotten them. The cycle repeats because the expectation itself shapes perception. Something changes the moment you question this belief. Instead of asking, "When will my soulmate arrive?" another question begins to surface. "Who am I becoming while I wait?" That question shifts attention from the external world to the hidden landscape within. It invites curiosity instead of desperation, awareness instead of longing, participation instead of passive expectation. The life that once seemed paused slowly begins moving again, not because someone else has entered it, but because you have finally stepped back into it with open eyes, steady presence, and a heart no longer held captive by the illusion that tomorrow is the only place where love can exist. Most people believe a soulmate is someone who completes them. They imagine another person arriving with the missing pieces of their personality, healing old wounds without effort, and bringing a sense of wholeness that has always felt just beyond reach. This idea is comforting, but it also hides a profound misunderstanding of the human psyche. The deepest relationship you will ever experience does not begin when another person enters your life. It begins when the divided parts within you finally recognize one another. Inside, every individual lives a quiet conflict. There is the self you show the world, carefully shaped by expectations, responsibilities, and the desire to be accepted. Then there is the hidden self, carrying forgotten dreams, buried emotions, unrealized strengths, and even the fears you rarely admit to yourself. Most people spend years strengthening the first while ignoring the second, yet the neglected parts never disappear. They wait patiently beneath the surface, influencing choices, relationships, and emotions in ways the conscious mind cannot easily explain. This is why so many relationships begin with overwhelming intensity. You are not only seeing another person, you are encountering qualities within them that awaken something sleeping inside yourself. Their confidence reflects the courage you have neglected. Their compassion reminds you of your own tenderness. Their creativity stirs a forgotten desire to express yourself. What feels like destiny is often an invitation to reclaim what already belongs to you. When these hidden qualities remain unconscious, they are projected onto another person. You begin believing they possess the happiness, security, or purpose that exists outside your reach. But no relationship can permanently carry the weight of another person's unfinished inner work. Eventually, reality replaces fantasy and disappointment appears where idealization once lived. The turning point comes when you stop searching for completion in another heart and begin discovering it within your own. Every fear faced, every emotion accepted, and every hidden strength embraced creates an inner union that no external circumstance can take away. Paradoxically, this is also when love becomes freer. You no longer seek someone to rescue you from yourself. You meet them as a whole human being, capable of sharing life rather than escaping it. And in that quiet completeness, the connection you once searched for in another begins to awaken from within. One of the greatest illusions in love is believing that you are seeing another person exactly as they are. In reality, the mind rarely meets someone without first placing invisible images upon them. It fills the empty spaces with hopes, memories, unmet needs, and silent longings collected over an entire lifetime. What feels like instant certainty is often something much deeper than attraction. It is the unconscious recognizing familiar emotional patterns and convincing you that you have finally found the answer to questions you have carried for years. This is why certain people seem unforgettable from the very beginning. They may say very little, yet you feel as though they understand you completely. Their presence appears almost magical, as if destiny itself arranged the meeting. But the intensity of these emotions does not always reveal who they truly are. More often, it reveals what has been waiting inside you to be seen. The qualities you admire so deeply may actually be reflections of your own unrealized potential. The comfort you experience may echo a childhood longing for safety. The overwhelming excitement may come from the hope that someone else can finally heal what has remained wounded within. Projection is not a sign of weakness. It is a natural function of the psyche. The danger begins when projection replaces perception. Instead of discovering another human being, you begin protecting an image you have unconsciously created. You ignore contradictions because they threaten the beautiful story your mind has written. You explain away red flags because accepting reality would mean letting go of the fantasy that has become emotionally precious. Sooner or later, life removes the mask. The person begins acting like themselves instead of the character your imagination assigned to them. For some, this moment feels like betrayal. In truth, it is often the first opportunity to experience genuine love rather than emotional illusion. Real connection begins only when two people are allowed to exist as they truly are, without carrying each other's hidden dreams, fears, or impossible expectations. The moment you recognize your projections, something extraordinary happens. You stop asking another person to complete a story they never wrote. Instead, you begin reclaiming the forgotten parts of yourself that you unknowingly placed into their hands. What once appeared to be a lost soulmate slowly transforms into a mirror, revealing that the qualities you searched for were never absent. They were quietly waiting within you, asking not to be found in someone else, but finally recognized in yourself. There comes a moment in every person's life when the endless pursuit begins to feel strangely empty. You have tried to be more attractive, more understanding, more available, more patient. You have replayed conversations in your mind, searched for hidden meanings in silence, and convinced yourself that if you just did one more thing, someone would finally choose you. At first, this pursuit feels like hope, but over time, hope quietly transforms into exhaustion. Without realizing it, you are no longer chasing love. You are chasing the feeling of being enough. The unconscious mind often confuses pursuit with purpose. It believes that constant effort proves devotion. Yet the harder you try to secure someone's affection, the more your own identity begins to revolve around their response. Their attention determines your confidence. Their absence shapes your emotions. Their approval becomes the measure of your worth. In that invisible exchange, you surrender something far more valuable than time. You surrender your inner freedom. This is why so many people remain trapped in relationships that never truly nourish them. They mistake emotional struggle for emotional depth. They believe that love must be earned through sacrifice, persistence, or endless understanding. But authentic connection does not require the abandonment of yourself. The moment love demands that you continuously betray your own peace, it ceases to be love and becomes dependence wearing the mask of devotion. The most powerful transformation begins when the need to chase quietly dissolves. Not because you have become cold or indifferent, but because you finally understand that your value cannot be negotiated. You no longer pursue people who repeatedly show you distance. You no longer interpret inconsistency as mystery or emotional unavailability as something you must solve. Instead, you begin honoring what is present instead of desperately clinging to what remains uncertain. Paradoxically, this is when your presence becomes stronger than your pursuit ever was. A person who is rooted in self-respect carries a calm that cannot be manufactured. They are no longer trying to convince others of their worth because they have already recognized it within themselves. Their relationships become choices instead of necessities, expressions instead of escapes, and partnerships instead of emotional rescues. When the chase finally ends, something remarkable takes its place. You discover that peace is far more attractive than desperation. Clarity is stronger than obsession, and quiet confidence speaks louder than endless persuasion. In releasing the need to run after love, you create the inner space where genuine connection can finally arrive, not as a reward for your effort, but as a reflection of the wholeness you have already begun to embody. For many people, love feels like something that must be controlled. They believe every message must be perfectly timed, every conversation carefully planned, every opportunity seized before it disappears. The mind becomes occupied with strategies, signs, and endless calculations, convinced that if enough effort is applied, destiny can be persuaded to cooperate. Yet beneath this constant need to manage every outcome lies a quiet fear, the fear that what is truly meant for you might never arrive unless you force it into existence. The unconscious does not flourish under pressure. It responds to alignment, not desperation. When your inner world is filled with anxiety, every decision is filtered through the fear of loss. You begin mistaking urgency for intuition. You chase people because silence feels unbearable. You ignore your own instincts because loneliness seems more frightening than compromise. In doing so, you move further away from the natural rhythm through which meaningful connections often emerge. There are moments in life that cannot be manufactured, no matter how carefully they are planned. A conversation happens unexpectedly. A stranger enters your path at the exact time you have stopped searching. A chance encounter alters the direction of your future in ways your conscious mind could never have predicted. These moments are not rewards for perfect behavior. They arise when your inner and outer worlds begin speaking the same language. What appears to be coincidence often reflects a deeper harmony that the rational mind struggles to explain. This does not mean you simply wait for life to happen while remaining passive. It means you stop exhausting yourself trying to control every possibility. You continue growing, learning, creating, and becoming more honest with yourself. You move through life with intention rather than obsession. Instead of asking how to make someone love you, you begin asking whether your own life reflects the person you are becoming. That subtle shift changes everything because your energy is no longer consumed by pursuit. It becomes available for presence. When you are aligned with your authentic values, your choices become clearer. You recognize relationships that nourish rather than deplete you. You no longer mistake emotional confusion for destiny or constant uncertainty for passion. What once felt like complicated signs becomes simple understanding. You trust yourself enough to walk away from what disturbs your peace and remain open to what genuinely resonates with your spirit. Ironically, the connections that endure are rarely the ones created through force. They emerge when two people meet without masks, without manipulation, and without the exhausting need to prove their worth. The moment you stop trying to command the timing of life, you discover that the most meaningful encounters often arrive naturally. They do not demand that you abandon yourself. They simply find you already standing where you were always meant to be. There are moments when loneliness feels less like an emotion and more like a verdict. You look around and see other people building relationships, creating families, sharing lives, while you quietly wonder why your own path feels so empty. The silence becomes difficult to bear. Every passing day seems to whisper the same painful question. What if I am meant to be alone? Yet this question, as convincing as it feels, often emerges from the surface of the mind rather than the deeper wisdom of the soul. Most people spend their lives trying to escape loneliness as quickly as possible. They fill every quiet moment with distractions, conversations, relationships, or endless activity. Anything feels better than sitting alone with themselves, but the unconscious has a remarkable way of using solitude as a messenger. When the outside world becomes quiet, the inner world finally has room to speak. Thoughts that were once buried begin to surface. Forgotten dreams return. Old fears reveal themselves. Hidden strengths, long ignored beneath the noise of everyday life, slowly begin asking for attention. This is why loneliness should not always be understood as an absence of love. Often it is the space where your deepest transformation begins. The person you become in solitude is often more important than the person you eventually meet. If every uncomfortable feeling is immediately covered by another relationship, another distraction, or another search for validation, the deeper work remains unfinished. The same emotional patterns quietly follow you into every new connection because they were never truly understood. The strange paradox is that the very emptiness you fear may be preparing you for a fuller life. Solitude strips away illusions. Without constant external reassurance, you begin discovering what genuinely matters to you. You learn the difference between wanting companionship and needing rescue. You begin recognizing your own voice instead of living according to the expectations of others. Little by little, the silence that once frightened you becomes a place of clarity rather than punishment. Something remarkable happens when loneliness is no longer treated as an enemy. It transforms into a teacher. It reveals where your worth has depended on outside approval. It uncovers the beliefs that convinced you love must come from someone else before it can exist within you. These discoveries are not comfortable, but they are profoundly liberating. Then one day, you notice a quiet shift. You no longer measure your life by who has or has not arrived. Your days become meaningful because they are lived fully, not because they are waiting to be completed. And it is often from this place of inner stability that genuine connection becomes possible, not because loneliness disappeared, but because it fulfilled its purpose. It guided you across the threshold between seeking someone to fill your emptiness and becoming someone whose life is already whole. Many people spend years trying to become the version of themselves they believe others will love. They carefully choose their words, hide their opinions, soften their boundaries, and silence parts of their personality that might seem too much or not enough. At first, these changes appear harmless. They feel like compromise, maturity, or simply learning how relationships work. But beneath these adjustments, something far more significant begins to happen. Little by little, the authentic self disappears behind a carefully constructed identity designed to earn acceptance rather than express truth. The unconscious carries a remarkable sensitivity to authenticity. It recognizes when you are living from your own center and when you are performing a role for the approval of others. Every time you ignore your genuine feelings to avoid rejection, an invisible conflict grows within you. One part longs to be seen exactly as it is, while another insists that love must be earned through perfection. This inner division creates a quiet exhaustion that no amount of external validation can truly relieve. It is often assumed that authenticity makes a person less attractive because it exposes imperfections. Yet the opposite is frequently true. What draws people towards someone is rarely flawless behavior. It is the unmistakable sense that they are real. A person who speaks honestly, laughs freely, admits mistakes, and lives according to deeply held values carries a quiet confidence that cannot be imitated. Their presence feels stable because it is not built upon constant performance. This is why relationships founded on masks eventually become fragile. When someone falls in love with a version of you that exists only to satisfy expectations, the connection demands continuous effort to maintain the illusion. Every interaction becomes a performance. Every disagreement feels dangerous because it threatens the identity you have created. Instead of experiencing intimacy, you become trapped in the exhausting task of protecting an image that was never fully yours. The greatest irony is that the qualities you fear will push people away are often the very qualities that allow genuine connection to form. Your unique perspective, your quiet strength, your imperfections, your resilience after hardship, even your vulnerability. These are not obstacles to love. They are expressions of your humanity. Authenticity does not guarantee that everyone will remain in your life, but it ensures that those who do are responding to the real person rather than a carefully rehearsed character. When you no longer shape your life around being chosen, something extraordinary changes. You begin choosing yourself, not through arrogance, but through honesty. Your decisions reflect your values instead of your fears. Your boundaries become acts of self-respect rather than walls of self-protection. You stop searching for approval because your identity is no longer dependent on someone else's acceptance. And from this place, love becomes something entirely different. It is no longer a reward for pretending to be perfect. It becomes the natural meeting of two people who have both found the courage to stand in the truth of who they are. The deepest connections are not drawn to flawless appearances or carefully crafted personalities. They are drawn to authenticity, because only what is real has the power to create a bond that endures. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about the soulmate journey is believing that it ends with another person. From childhood, you are taught to imagine a future where someone finally arrives, understands every hidden part of you, heals your deepest wounds, and gives your life the sense of completion it has always lacked. It is a beautiful story, but it quietly encourages you to search outward for what has always been calling from within. The longing you feel may not be a sign that someone is missing from your life. It may be the echo of a forgotten relationship with your own soul. Deep within every person exists a silent division. There is the life you have consciously built, and there is the deeper self that has patiently waited beneath habits, expectations, fears, and old identities. Most people spend years developing careers, relationships, and responsibilities while rarely asking whether they truly know the person living behind all of those roles. The result is an invisible sense of incompleteness. No matter how much is achieved or acquired, something still feels absent because the separation is not between you and another person. It is between you and yourself. This inner reunion begins with the courage to face what has long been avoided, the emotions you buried to appear strong, the dreams you abandoned to satisfy others, the wounds you ignored because they seemed too painful to examine, the qualities you rejected because they did not fit the image you believed the world wanted to see. None of these disappear with time. They simply wait in the unconscious, quietly influencing every decision, every relationship, and every expectation of love. The remarkable truth is that every step towards self-understanding restores another piece of this forgotten relationship. Every fear you acknowledge without running from it weakens the walls separating you from your authentic nature. Every honest choice, every healthy boundary, every act of self-respect becomes part of a deeper reconciliation. Slowly, the stranger within becomes familiar. The conflict that once exhausted you gives way to an unexpected sense of peace. From this place, relationships are no longer asked to provide identity or rescue. They become opportunities to share a life that is already rooted in meaning. You no longer expect another person to carry the responsibility of making you whole because you have discovered that wholeness was never absent. It was simply hidden beneath years of unconscious searching. This is the paradox that transforms everything. The moment you stop believing that another person holds the missing half of your existence, you become capable of experiencing love without fear, possession, or dependence. You meet others not from emptiness, but from abundance. You recognize them not as saviors, but as fellow travelers walking their own path toward inner truth. And perhaps that has been the real destination all along. The soulmate you believed was waiting somewhere beyond the horizon was never meant to rescue your life. The deepest reunion has always been the quiet return to the self you were before fear, expectation, and illusion convinced you that you were incomplete. Once that reunion takes place, you no longer wait for love to begin because you realize it has been unfolding within you from the very start. The journey you have taken today was never really about finding someone else. It was about uncovering the invisible beliefs that quietly shaped the way you searched for love, the way you experienced loneliness, and the way you understood yourself. Perhaps the greatest discovery is not that your soulmate is already on the way, nor that destiny has a perfect plan waiting to unfold. The greatest discovery is that the life you have been postponing does not need to wait for another person's arrival. When you stop believing that someone else holds the missing pieces of your identity, something extraordinary begins to happen. The fear of being alone loses its power. The need to chase fades into quiet confidence. The illusions created by projection begin to dissolve, allowing you to see both yourself and others with greater clarity. What once felt like an endless search gradually transforms into a life of deeper awareness. This does not mean you stop believing in profound love. Quite the opposite. You begin believing in a love that is no longer built upon desperation, fantasy, or emotional dependence. You become capable of meeting another person without asking them to rescue you from your own emptiness. Instead, you meet them as someone who has already learned to walk beside themselves. That is where authentic intimacy begins, not between two incomplete people searching for salvation, but between two individuals who have each discovered a home within their own soul. There is a quiet truth that many spend a lifetime overlooking. The person who is most prepared for love is rarely the one who has spent years chasing it. It is the one who has spent years understanding themselves. Every fear faced, every wound acknowledged, every illusion released has been preparing you for something greater than romance. It has been preparing you to live honestly. So if today you choose to let go of waiting, let it not be because you have given up on love. Let it be because you have finally chosen to stop postponing your own life. Walk forward with the quiet certainty that your worth has never depended on being chosen. Your value has never been determined by someone's presence or absence. It has always existed within you, patiently waiting to be recognized. And perhaps that is the deepest mystery of all. The moment you no longer need another person to complete your story is often the moment your story truly begins. From that place, every relationship becomes a gift rather than a necessity. Every encounter becomes an opportunity rather than a rescue, and every step forward becomes an expression of the person you have finally become. If this message resonated with something deep inside you, let it become more than inspiration. Let it become a decision to stop chasing what cannot complete you, a decision to stop waiting for permission to live fully, and a decision to trust that the greatest relationship you will ever build is the one you cultivate with your own authentic self. Because when that relationship is whole, love is no longer something you search for. It becomes something you naturally reflect wherever you go.